Good morning, my lovelies. Guess what day it is? It's graduation day for some of these lovely babies that I've been growing. So I've been experimenting with propagating different types of leaves. With African violets, you can propagate in a number of different ways, and the easiest way is by taking a leaf from the mother plant and then planting it in soil, and then eventually, once you do that, you have little baby African violet plantlets like we have right here. So you have the different stages. Down here are the ones that I've planted in the last few weeks. They're still creating roots and everything, and eventually they get to go up, and this is kind of how I separate everything in my room. All these ones down here are just rooting. These here are preparing to pop some little plantlets out. These especially have signs of ones that are coming out, and then once they start coming out of the soil, like you see here, you can kind of see them through the plastic here. Once they start coming out of the soil, I pop them up here on this upper rack so I can just kind of keep a closer eye on them. And once they start getting bigger, like this guy here, I move them up here so I can start monitoring the size. So I have all these leaves, but I've never really separated them before. But I think I have a couple here that are ready. This one here, this is actually Ma's Arctic Sky, a leaf from Ma's Arctic Sky, and there's the mother plant. So I got a leaf off of the mother plant here, planted it in this cup here, and so we have lots of little baby leaflets. They're not quite ready yet because Ma's Arctic Sky, it's a variegated leaf. You don't see much variegation on the mother plant, but you see them a lot on the little baby plantlets. And so my group tells me that I need to kind of wait till they green up a little bit. Variegated leaves don't have a lot of chlorophyll, which means they can't really produce a lot of food for the plant to grow. So they suggest that I try to green these up a little bit. I've been putting them closer to the light, so they're going to be on mama leaf for a little bit, because when you're growing these, the little plantlets are depending a lot on the nutrients and water and everything from the mother leaf. So let's see, we've got Jersey snowflakes here, and we also have Texas Stardom, and this is the biggest baby that I have of all. So today I'm going to graduate about, I think, 3, maybe 4 of these plantlets, because I think they are in the stage of doing that. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to attempt to separate them for the very first time. All right, so the ones I'm going to try and separate are Degas, Maine, Texas Stardom, and Wrangler Spanish Cavalier. And I kind of added this one at the very last minute, but this one seems to be growing at quite a rate, so this guy might actually be ready. Some leaves produce one baby. For example, like these 3 here, they only seem to have produced 1 plantlet. And Maine produced all of these little plantlets, so I'm going to have to try and separate them. So basically what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be separating each of these babies, because these cups here, they're way too big. So like Degas has been on its own, but this cup is way too big for it to grow healthy. And see, I'm kind of worried because this big leaf here is beginning to turn a little yellow, so I'm thinking that this guy might do a lot better in a smaller cup. Now, you might be surprised, but African violets really don't like huge containers. They like more compact containers because their roots are so prone to being overwatered. And the more dirt you have in there, the more opportunity you have in order to overwater it or getting the roots way too damp. Now, I think these are 7-ounce cups, which I use for propagating the leaves. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be transferring all of these little plantlets into these small 3-ounce cups. So notice how much smaller that cup is, and so that should be a good size for each of these little plantlets to grow into, because like I said, it's less chance of overwatering. And also African violet roots, they like to be compact, and they tend to flower better and grow better when they're in a tight little area. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and prepare these cups just like I prepare the bottom of these cups. When I propagate them, I'm just going to have a little hole. And actually yesterday I bought a soldering iron, because what some people like to do is they like to take a soldering iron to melt a hole in these cups. So instead of cutting a vent on the side, or maybe I might do that anyway, maybe I'll just kind of put a little hole, fire up my new soldering iron so I can melt a hole in here, and maybe I'll just still cut some holes around the edge of these cups to make sure that I'm not overwatering these little plantlets. And then another thing, I've been asking my African Violet group some advice on when to separate these babies. Now, like I said earlier, some of my variegated plantlets, they're not ready because they're not green enough. Texas Stardom is certainly big enough. And so like a rule of thumb that I got from my group is that if the leaves are about as big as I think it's a quarter, then they should be big enough for you to handle or big enough for you to separate, because when you start propagating and when you start getting plantlets, the first thing you want to do is, okay, when do I get to separate them? When do I get to separate them from the mother leaf? Are they big enough? And I guess the rule of thumb that they're considering is that you want them to be big enough for you to be able to handle without really damaging the little plantlets, because they're attached to the mother leaf, but they're also growing their own roots. So each little plantlet, and I'm not quite sure how many we have here, we'll find out, but each little plantlet here has their own roots. So you want them to be big enough for you to handle and separate, and they still have a good amount of roots. So I guess we'll find out how many roots. This is Degas. No, this is Maine. So, and I had planted Maine. So most of these I planted back in November. So Maine, Degas, so Spanish Cavalier, this one's a fast grower. I planted this guy back in December. And Texas Stardom, I planted Texas Stardom back in October. So this is quite a process. So naturally you're going to be anxious about when you're going to separate them. So the rule of thumb is if the leaf is about the size of a quarter, got a quarter. So definitely in Texas Stardom's case, in Spanish Cavalier, yep. And like I said, for Degas, this is kind of a special case because the mother leaf is already gone. So this is just basically a matter of repotting this one. And for Maine, yeah. Yep, that's about a quarter, that's about a quarter. Not all of the leaves are that size, but I think as long as each plantlet has a leaf that's a good size and I'm able to take it out without damaging it, it should be good. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and start my prep work. Got my cups, I'm gonna burn some holes, fire up my brand new soldering iron to make some holes. The other thing that I asked about is, I asked about whether I should wick water these plants. Now, if you're not familiar with what wick watering is, here's an example of wick watering. This is my fun trail, and notice I have this little reservoir, and I'm gonna have to Fun Trail seems to be a very thirsty plant, but basically you have so in the hole, you notice that you have this string hanging out. And what you do is you fill this glass reservoir with water, it's fertilized water, and then you let the string go into the water. And what that does is it wicks water, and the string is kind of coiled around the bottom of the pot here. And what that does is it wicks up moisture from the reservoir up to the soil. So as long as I keep this full, and I'm going to have to keep Fun Trail watered. I just put water in this a couple days ago, and this is just a really thirsty plant. But as long as you keep water in the reservoir, it keeps the soil moist. And apparently Fun Trail really likes being wick watered because it has all the blossoms. So what I'm also going to be doing when I'm transplanting these babies is I'm also going to be setting them up for wick watering as well, because according to my African Violet group, when you're transplanting them, it's good to set them up for wick watering right away, especially if that's how you're planning on watering them. So I'm also going to be doing that. And I think one lady in my group said that she also sets up her propagation cups for wick watering. So she also has that string and keeps the leaf and the little plantlets watered as well. So I'm going to try that next time I try propagating some leaves. So I'll be sure to let you guys know how that goes. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do some prep work. We're going to go through the process for the very first time of separating these plantlets. It's graduation day, Toby. What you think? All right, so before I get started, I'm going to do a little bit of prep work. I've got some yarn here. This is what I use for some of my smaller wick watered plants. So the amount of water that gets sucked into the soil with your wicks greatly depends on the size of the wick. So if you have something small, like these little 3-ounce cups I'm going to be putting these plantlets in, you don't need anything big. I have bigger wicks for like full-size plants, but in this case, I'm just going to be using just this plain, and this is just plain old acrylic yarn that I got from a place like Walmart or Target or someplace like that. And you just basically take a length of it out, and I'm just going to eyeball it. It could be like maybe 3 inches or so. And you want enough to be able to go into the reservoir, and you also want enough of it to go up into the hole in the container and to wrap around kind of like the center, the bottom of the container here. So 2 or 3 inches. Like I said, I'm just kind of eyeballing this. And I'm not exactly sure, so I know for sure that I have 1, 2, 3 single plantlets. I'm not quite sure how many Maine here has, so I'm just gonna, maybe I'll cut like 6 or 7 pieces here. And after I cut them, and I'm cutting them now before I start separating them, because after you cut them, you'll want to soak these little wicks in some warm water with a bit of dishwashing liquid in there. And the reason why is a lot of times this acrylic yarn has a lot of sizing in it or something when it first comes out, so the warm soapy water helps to get rid of that. Also, if you're new to wick watering, you'll want to use something like acrylic yarn. You want to use kind of like a synthetic type of fiber. You don't want to use anything like wool or cotton or anything like that, because they'll get wet and it disintegrate. They'll start rotting. So, use something like acrylic yarn or man-made fiber in order to use these wicks. All right, so I cut all these wicks out. All right, and I got some warm water here, and just stick all the little wicks in there, and then put a little bit of, few drops of dishwashing liquid in there. And we're just stirring it about. All right, so now the next thing I want to do is I want to prepare these little cups. Need to make some drainage slits here. And the easiest thing to do is just to I take my X-Acto knife and I just kind of cut out of the sides, just like that. So when you water, the water will be able to drain out. But I also, since I'm wick watering this, I also want to kind of put a hole here. So like I said, I'm gonna prepare about maybe 7 of these cups. Some people, instead of making the cuts on the side of the cup, they make a hole. I think I'm gonna go ahead and do that too, since I'm gonna be wick watering. And that's where I'm gonna put the wick. And the way that they do that is that they use a little soldering iron. So went to Harbor Freight yesterday and I got a little very inexpensive soldering iron. I think it was like maybe $5, $6 or something like that. Don't need to be, as far as I know, it doesn't need to be anything serious, just like a little hobbyist soldering iron. And you just use that to make little holes in the cup. All right, so that is 6, 1 more. And also you just be very careful when you're doing this. Just keep your thumb out of the way. All right. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and fire up my new soldering iron and we'll see how this works. I love new toys. All right, so I had to stop filming for about 10-20 minutes because that plastic really smells. So next time I do this, I'm going to do this outside so that I won't have to deal with fanning the smell out of the house. So, and burning plastic, it's really not good to breathe. So do this outside next time if you want to try that out. While I was waiting, I went ahead and rinsed out this wick here. I've got a pot ready for this guy, and so I'm going to start with the one that's probably the easiest one, the biggest one. This is Texas Stardom. I got the parent plant from Linden I believe, Linden Lion from last year. And this is one of the leaves that had fallen off when I got that shipment. So, and actually I probably should have put some paper down, but like I said, I'm always messing up my kitchen counter. So this leaf had fallen off during the shipment, so I decided to go ahead and stick it in some soil, see what happened, and this is what happened. So I'm going to start off with the one that has the biggest babies. And I'm just going to be loosening the soil here. All right, and I guess the idea, okay, so we've got some roots right here, you see? And so the idea is to try to separate, because, you know, the mother leaf has its own roots, but then the baby plantlet also has roots of their own. And the object is to separate the baby from the mother while making sure that the baby leaf has as much roots as possible. So I'm going to be a little nervous dealing with Maine over there that has the multiple babies, but gonna get started with the biggest one here. And African violets have really delicate roots, so I'm just trying to be as careful as possible. And I did water this guy yesterday, so sometimes watering them helps loosen the roots up a little bit. So we've got the roots here. I'm not quite sure whether it's the mom or the baby, but I'm gonna try and preserve as many roots as possible. All right, first time. So basically, from what I'm understanding, is that you just simply separate the baby from the mother plant like that. Okay, here we go. I'm trying to do this without doing too much damage to this little baby here. And I guess you just tease it out as much as possible. All right, there we go. All right, so mom is separated from the baby. And look, baby has its own roots here. All right, cool. So this is now a separated plant all on its own. So as far as mother plant, so what you could probably do is you could stick mama back in soil and see if she'll produce more plantlets. This particular leaf seems to be very, very strong, so I might do that. Or you might just cut right here the last time where it grew roots and then see if it reroots again and then produces another plantlet. For now, I'm going to be worrying about planting baby here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and prep this cup. I'm going to prep for wick watering, so I'm going to go ahead and actually, I have some soil here. Let's move these guys here. All right, I have some soil here that I use for both propagation and wick watering. It's just a mix of African violet soil with a lot of perlite in it, so you want to make that soil nice and fluffy. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply put a little bit of soil. Actually, that's right, I'm wick watering this. So what I need to do is I need to take the wick, stick the wick here in the hole that I made. I'm so excited I forgot what I'm doing, which is fine. Okay. All right, and then you go ahead and you pull the yarn, you pull the wick all the way up to the top of the cup, and then you add the soil. I add a small layer of soil here. And remember, this is going to have a lot of perlite in it because you don't want to drown your little plantlet. You want to make sure that there's lots of air pockets so that when you're watering it, you're not drowning your plant. This is especially important if you're wick watering. Might eventually do a video on how I wick water my plants. And so now I'm just going to simply lay the wick here along the edge of the cup. All right, add a bit more soil. All right, so now I'm going to add a bit more soil up to the top, and now I'm going to make a little hole here to put in my brand new separated baby violet. Add a little bit more soil here around the base. And we're not compacting the soil, remember, especially little baby violets. Their roots are very delicate, so you don't want to compact the soil. Just give them enough support so they can stand up. All right, make sure, and I'm going to make sure that the crowns here don't have a lot of dirt. All right, so if you have a little, I have a little old makeup brush, so what I'm doing is I'm just going to brush some of the soil away from in between the leaves, off the leaves themselves, and make sure that that crown is free of dirt. Yeah, see, you have the tiniest little leaf here, so I'm just gonna make sure that there's no dirt here because that can make the crown of your little plantlet rot, and you don't want that. All right, there. So I have separated my first baby. Whew, that was a little scary, but it wasn't bad. So now I'm gonna set, this is Texas Stardom plantlet number, it only had one plantlet, so I'm gonna set this baby back here. All right, and here's Mama Leaf. I'm not sure if I'm going to replant her or not, but if the leaf is strong enough, because she has a ton of roots, and she seems like a pretty strong leaf, so, you know, I might see if I could get another baby out. Maybe, maybe not, I'll see how I feel. All right, so the next one, so this is Degas. Technically, Degas does not have a mother leaf because, as you can see here, I had to cut the mother leaf off because she was beginning to look really, you know, not look so great. I wanted to save the plantlet because sometimes if there's something wrong with the mother leaf, it could spread to the babies. So I just decided to go ahead and cut the mother leaf off. So this plantlet has more or less been on its own for a bit, but I still want to kind of separate the stem out. So I guess this is the next. Yeah, we got one leaf that's kind of going. And like I said, this cup is way too big. So I'm just gonna put this little baby in its new home. So here is the stem. Like I said, first time I'm doing this, so I'm just gonna go ahead and see if I can just kind of wrench the stem off. While keeping as many roots as possible. Okay, there. All right, yep, we got some roots. Yep, we got some good sized roots here. So we'll see if this baby will make it. I hope so. This is Degas. Now we do have another leaf. I do have another leaf that has a lot of babies. So yeah, notice how a lot of the roots are coming from the stem of the mother plant. So when you're separating it, you have to try to make sure that you keep the baby roots on. So yeah, this is actually kind of fascinating. This is like the beginning of the crown here. And these are all the roots that are growing out of it. This is what it looks like up close. Really cool. It's really cool how this works. I went ahead and I grabbed another wick. And so we're just gonna do the same process as I did for Texas Stardom. Okay, and this time I'm gonna remember to put the wick in first. All right, a little bit of soil. Now, sometimes the babies won't make it, from what I understand. It all depends on whether their roots are strong enough, whether you've had enough roots, that you've separated out enough roots, whether the baby's strong enough. Okay, looks like this one was kind of in distress already because this leaf is a little yellowing, which is kind of why I wanted to see if I could move it into a smaller cup to see if it did better there. So hopefully this one will survive, but we'll just see how strong this guy is. All right, this is Degas, new little plantlet. And I also have a second leaf of Degas, so if this one doesn't make it, then at least I have the second leaf. All right, making a bigger and bigger mess out here, and there was, of course, no mama leaf to kind of salvage there. All right, and then finally, the last of the ones that have the single babies is the Wrangler Spanish Cavalier. This whole African violet propagation process is such a long process. I potted this guy up in early December. It's April. Texas Stardom, I started propagating in October, April 2nd. And from October to April 2nd is how long it took from the leaf to getting to that size to actually separating it out. So if you want to do propagation of African violet leaves, it's fun. It's also a long process and you have to be patient. All right, so again, hoping that we have enough. If I do this right, you are not watching an expert here. This is my first time doing this, and so I hope that these guys survive this whole process, because think about it, separating it from your mother leaf, it's a bit of a traumatic process, so I'm just being as careful as I can, because most of these roots are the mother's roots, but you do have some. Oh, okay, so it looks like the baby is actually separating itself here, because the object is you want to have as many roots, and that's also why you want to be patient, because you want the baby to have as many roots as possible. Okay. All right, got a couple of good ones there, so hopefully this one will live too. But I still have the original plant, so most of these I'm separating now. I have the mother plant, and the mother plant's doing well, or I have duplicates, or I have like other leaves that I have in propagation. So this is also why I wanted to start off with these guys, because if I do something wrong, I won't be losing all the leaves, and I still have the mother plant. Now, Degas is actually a leaf I got from the Selective Gardener that has the website that that has Optimara plants. So, and basically I got 13 varieties back in November of just Optimara leaves from the Selective Gardener. Degas is one of them. And when you're propagating and you want to have multiple leaves, just in case the mother plant only yields one baby, like in this case. I do have another one in propagation, and the mother plant is doing really well. So if this baby doesn't make it, I hope it does, but if this baby doesn't make it, then I won't be out of plant completely. And if this was one where I only had one leaf, where I was in danger of possibly losing it, I would probably wait a little bit longer just to make sure that the plantlet is growing as many roots as possible. But like I said, I'm just trying to figure out how to do this. These seem big enough for me to try it for the first time, and it's normal for them to wobble a little bit. All right, so this is Wrangler Spanish Cavalier. Very pretty plant. The mother plant is actually getting ready to be in bloom, and very sturdy leaf, just like Texas Stardom. I might just replant this leaf. And actually, I think as far as the leaves, the babies come out of the cut portion of the leaf. So if you wanted to try to repropagate this one, I might try to repropagate it just to see if it would work or not. You kind of, if I remember reading about this, you're going to have to cut the stem again above the roots, because the way the propagation works is when you cut the leaf, it sends a signal to the leaf that you need to have some kind of growth, whether it's roots, whether it's roots or babies. All right, so we've already separated Wrangler Spanish Cavalier, Degas, and Texas Stardom. So now we get to the one that's a little bit difficult, that has the multiple babies. This is Maine, and this is the first leaf of Maine that I've planted. So we're gonna have multiple babies out of this one. All right, big mess on my counter as usual. How can you tell which is which? Well, you can kind of see crowns here. So I can't tell exactly how many, but I think there's, well, there's definitely one here. And I think there might be one back there. You can kind of see how they're growing. You have kind of like a center and then leaves coming up around it. And then you have maybe one here. Yeah, it's a small one. All right, so as I did before, I'm just gonna shake the soil off the leaves. And I've seen videos of more experienced people than me separating these babies out, and they just seem to just kind of rip them apart. And I'm not that brave yet. Okay. All right, and so I guess you can kind of see, all right, this is really cool. So you can kind of see the where the base of the plant's growing, like right there. And I guess you just kind of work it until plants start separating. I'm just going to use this to try to tease things apart, because I'm trying to save these roots. And like I said, I'm not as experienced with this, so I'm just trying to go as slow as possible. Check that out. Yep, you can kind of see where the different plantlets are coming up. So this looks like it might actually be one big plantlet right here. because the bigger it is, the more likely it'll be that it'll survive. And looks like this one might be a little plantlet here, so okay, yeah, this looks like a little tiny plantlet on its own. I'm not quite sure that's going to make it, but I always have hope. So I'll probably plant that one anyway. All right, so looks like we're shaking out to, yeah, lost that leaf. So it looks like we're shaking out to 1, here's 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, this is nerve-wracking if you're doing this for the first time. All right, so it looks like this one tiny one just dropped. I'm not sure if that one's going to make it, but hey, like I said, I always have hope, so I might just pot that one up anyway. Okay, looks like I see the base of this one here, so I'm going to see if I can just kind of gently pull it away. I can hear it. I don't like hearing it rip. All right, so here's the other one. All right, you see the whole base and the crown here and all of the little roots right there. So that's baby number 2. All right, I'm really interested in this one because that one looks like it might be the one. Okay, looks like things are separating. Okay, so we've separated from the mother leaf. Thank you, Mom. Yep, so looks like we have another little mini one. All right, there we go. Here's another one. So this is the big one. Yeah, see, there's the crown. There's the beginning of the crown right there. And then we have the roots. Okay, we have this little mini one. All right, and there's the beginning of the crown. No, you probably can't see it. There's the beginning of the crown. That's the stem of the African violet right there, and then you have the roots growing out of it. All right, and they just separated on their own. Oh, this one has a really long stem. See? Really, really cool. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3 ones that have a decent chance. And we have this little teeny one, and I'm not sure that this one really has much of a chance, so I probably won't pot that one up. But, I don't know. See, I hate throwing it away, so I might just pot this one up because I'm just sentimental that way. All right, so 1 mother leaf. Thank you, Mom. And we've got 3 decent-sized babies. 1 that's kind of iffy. I will probably pot that one up because I like giving them all a chance. Now see, that's the other, you do have to wait for a while when you're propagating African violets, but look, you can get 3 to 4 violets out of 1 leaf. So that's the cool thing about propagating African violets. If you're patient enough, you can be rewarded with multiple plants. All right. There we go. And now you see why we want such small pots. Hopefully they'll be much more comfortable now that they're by themselves. Hopefully they'll be much more comfortable in a smaller pot. All by themselves. All right, here is the big guy. And you never know. I mean, that's why I'm planting them all. Because you never know. The one that you think may be the one that survives, you never, I mean, there could be a reason why it's not strong enough, so that's why I want to give them all a chance. And then also doing this process, now it's pretty clear to see why you want them to be a certain size before you attempt this. Because imagine trying to pull these roots if they're teeny, teeny, tiny little plantlets. You know, kind of like this guy here. That's even more nerve-wracking. All right, that's number 3. And finally, the teeny tiny number 4. All right, ever so tiny. But we'll see how it does. All right, that's number 4. All right, now after I've allowed them to soak a little bit, I'm going to cover the tops of them with a plastic bag. Now you might have noticed that they were covered in plastic bags when I was showing you all the plantlets upstairs. And these guys weren't. These particular leaves that I was preparing to separate, they weren't in the plastic bags for a specific reason. They spent most of their lives all covered up in the plastic bag when they were propagating. I removed the plastic bag so they hardened up a little bit because I knew I was trying to prepare them to be separated. But now that they've actually been separated, their roots are a little fragile. They're going to be in a little bit of shock. So I call this plastic bag therapy. This gives them a little bit of extra moisture, which will allow them to kind of recuperate a little bit more. So that's why I'm sticking them back in the plastic bag a little bit, just so that they have a little bit of extra TLC while they're trying to recuperate from being separated. So that's it. These are all of my new babies, my new plantlets that came from these mother leaves. And while I'm here, just go ahead and see if I can repropagate these mother leaves here. All right, and I'll just take my handy X-Acto knife. And as always, you always want to sterilize whatever you're cutting your plants or your roots or your stems with. And I'm just going to cut right here above the roots. Yep, just like so. And again, the cut is to encourage the plant to grow. So whenever you have a cut portion of the plant, it has hormones that says, hey, we need to do something in order to survive. We need to grow. So I'm just going to go ahead and plant them in another cup. I'm going to do the same thing with Spanish Wrangler here. If you want to try and replant this, that's actually a good reason why you can leave the stem a little longer. See? Now we have, and also, of course, 45-degree angle. I've got smaller cups this time. When I first propagated these guys, I had them in these large 7-ounce cups. And I think I waste a lot of soil that way. And I want to see how they do in these little smaller 5-ounce cups. And we put the plantlets in 3-ounce cups. So those are the 2 sizes if you want to start propagating plants. Get some 5-ounce cups, 3-ounce cups for when the babies are big enough to be separated. And it'll be a lot of fun. So that is my adventure in separating my first African violet babies. I hope they all survive. I hope if they can't all survive, I hope most of them survive. So I will give you some updates on how they're doing on my blog, and I may actually make another video to show some progress. So stick around and see how they do. Thanks for watching.